sounded like a pretty good investment to me. Yeah, it cost more than it would have in other contexts, but it was worth it in the sense that we were facing a $6 million annual structural deficit that kept, and so to get that straightened out and to put the city on the right course where it's saving that money every year going forward, and now is able to go out to bonding and get some infrastructure built, is all to the good. So you can't look at the expenses in isolation. Are you getting your money's worth? What's the value that's being delivered for whatever expense is incurred?
Yeah, and just a few weeks ago, and to his credit, Mayor Diosa seems to be ushering in just a new era in Central Falls. They just had Central Falls Restaurant Week, which I didn't get a chance to go to, but living in Cumberland, I plan to make it next time. There seems to be this renewed spirit. You've got private contributions going into the library. Volunteerism seems to be at a new high because you've sort of at least moved aside this mushroom cloud of political corruption. It really seems to be a rebirth going on there that you don't see in many other municipalities in the state. In terms of the mechanics, then, do you see at this point that they talk about the General Motors bankruptcy as being almost a prepackaged bankruptcy? If other municipalities have to go into this, is the groundwork there to essentially do that?
I think much of it is there because now we have the Central Falls precedent. And by the way, the Central Falls precedent also served as a bloody shirt that was able to be waved in the face of other cities and towns, to including Providence, to get concessions that, in my view, otherwise wouldn't have been made, because they can say, do you want us to go into bankruptcy like Central Falls and take a 50% haircut? I'm only asking for a cost of living adjustment. Please, I mean. So I think it was useful. I don't think they went anywhere near far enough in Providence yet, but I do believe that it will be simpler and more expeditious and less expensive in future outings, because I think we've laid some groundwork and we've got some folks that have experience doing this.
Yeah, to their credit, it would appear that different mayors have taken a different stand. It would appear that Mayor Grebian in Pawtucket and Mayor McKee in Cumberland prominently at least address the issue on a proactive basis, particularly Mayor Grebian, who seems to be ushering in some era of financial responsibility in Pawtucket. Dr. Harrop, what do you see? And because the question always is, there's waste. The Progressive, I happened to be at an event downtown in Providence the other night, and a leader in the Young Progressive Democratic movement, who is a pretty astute guy, countered to me that they're clearly one of the reasons why municipal government seems to be running so poorly is that there aren't enough people working there. And he, of course, challenged me to the ultimate question, what would you cut? Where do you see any particular area that just screams for reform in the city of Providence?
Well, there's a few areas. We have been giving police details away for free, even though they're supposed to be paid. We have millions owed to the city on various by various community organizations. They just don't do that for political reasons. We still have various earmarks within the city council where they get money to give out to their constituents without really much follow-through with any of that. The city school administration is really top-heavy at this point in compared to other cities as well. Now, it doesn't reach down to the bottom at all, given the schools and the like, but there's a top-heavy administration still within the school department, which is more than 50% of our budget at this particular time. So there are three quick areas that we can begin to cut. But, there isn't much left in Providence. Laying off 100 police, cutting ambulance runs, not repairing roofs in schools. We haven't got much less to cut at this point.
Well, don't forget about these pensions that you identified. The folks who are getting $190,000 in a municipal bankruptcy, those wouldn't survive 2 days.
Oh, exactly. But that's one of the reasons to pursue this track at this point. I mean, you retire at $59,000 as a fire chief. Yeah, you should get a good pension, but not just in his contract says he not only gets $197,000, his wife gets it until her death, and should he at the age of 100 marry an 18-year-old, she will get it till she dies at age 100. That's the contract.
That was the same in Central Falls.
Exactly.
Mike Riley, you've made some really interesting analysis too of what's generally referred to as OPED expenses. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's basically health care costs, and what should happen, what generally should happen to an employee is at age 65 they should go into Medicare. I mean, that's generally what should happen. but most cities and towns across the United States actually have some other contract with their local employees. Providence has about $1.2 billion in expected costs that it hasn't financed. So you can add another B to your list of Bs before, Mr. Coming Up Mayor, and you'll see that Providence is in real financial trouble. One of the things I want to point out, not just OPEB, but pensions, I looked at this thing nationally, and I've looked at cities and towns all over the United States, not states, and Providence is just an outlier. It's a huge outlier, and most of the cities and towns in Rhode Island are an outlier. This exact conversation that we're having now is not going on in that many places. The average city and town, the top 25 cities in the United States, is 75% funded. We're 26. Okay, so what's happening here is highly unusual. It means that, yes, defined benefit plans can work in a city or town where all the numbers make sense and it's funded, but something else happened here, and we don't deserve defined benefit plans if we're not going to fund them and we're not going to tell the truth.
Dr. Harrop, do you see the seeds of union cooperation, or will they make it a particularly acrimonious debate in Providence?
I think they'll make it acrimonious. I think, I ran for mayor 8 years ago. I told them then that the pensions they were being promised then were never going to happen. And they laughed in my face. They said, no person will ever cut whatever and no court will allow. And, of course, Mayor Taveras shows up, and within the second week he's cutting their COLAs and he's cutting their benefits at this. And they acquiesced at that time. But they're really rigid at this particular time. They are forcing us, in one sense it would be good, they're forcing us to fund the pensions at 95% under the new contracts we have with them. We don't have that money. That's going to fall apart at this particular time. There's no way we have any further ability to raise our taxes above the national top rate that it is now, and it's not going to happen. So I think they will fight tooth and nail with it.
We've only got a minute or two left in the show, and again, thank all of you so much for coming and taking time on a Sunday evening. Let's go around the room, starting with Mike. Just in 20 or 30 seconds, give me your. I'm going to put you on the spot here, but give me your prediction as to, as we like to say in Coalition Land, how the movie ends.
Unfortunately, my friend Mr. Harrop will probably not be elected, and the election will probably go, I'm guessing, was going to go to Cianci. And I'm hoping that he sees the light that Dan has provided him, but I'm guessing he goes to pension obligation bonds, and that produces yet another disaster we haven't discussed.
Judge Flanders, what say you?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see more use of Chapter 9, not just here in Rhode Island, but across the nation, as cities and towns and politicians discover its utility, and particularly how taxpayers discover how useful it is. And I think the stigma will begin to go away from bankruptcy in a municipal context, just as it's gone away in the private law context. It used to be bankruptcy was a bad thing, but General Motors, the airlines, many industries that are now thriving have been through it. So I predict you'll see more Chapter 9s.
Dr. Dan, why don't you lead us out of the show? Folks, thank you for listening tonight. Coalition_radio on Twitter, coalitionradio.us. Dr. Dan, you've got the last word.
I think that we'll be sitting here 5 years from now as the city enters into bankruptcy in even worse shape, and people will going, who is that guy running for mayor 5 years ago that said we should go to bankruptcy?
God bless all of you. See you next week.